Hello, I'm Jill. Welcome to my channel. I set this up a little while ago to talk about how being a Jehovah's Witness, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, can have an impact on sex and relationships and general intimacy. I've got a couple of videos out, including an introduction where I talk about the kinds of things I'm going to discuss. This time I'm going to do a video on sex workers and people who either while being witnesses or having left the organisation were sex workers. So for anybody who doesn't know about witness culture and doctrine, it's not possible to be openly both at the same time. Very much forbidden to have any kind of sexual activity outside of marriage. So nobody who was a active witness and a sex worker would have been open about that, and it's quite a cultural shift on the outside to be okay with those kind of things. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm also going to give my experience at the end because while I was technically still on the books as a regular pioneer, I was also a pole dancer and lap dancer. It's not quite as theatrical and dramatic as it sounds, but I'm going to give my story at the end as well. A huge thank you to all the people who have participated in this. I've had people write their stories for me so I can read them out loud, and I've had a couple of people brave enough to be interviewed as well, so I'm really grateful to those people. I'd like to take this opportunity to say that I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not doing this in any kind of professional capacity. I'm just giving my experiences and those of my interviewees and participants. So nothing is meant to be authoritative here. In fact, I'd like to go so far this time that I'd like to turn this into a thought experiment. So what I'd really like my listeners, you dear viewer today, to do is just to listen, just to take in somebody else's story, not to impose your own moral views or your own ideas of what you would do in the same situation. I just want you to listen. Why don't we talk about how you became a witness and what kind of witness you were, whether you really believed it, and yeah, let's talk about young you.
Okay, born in, so no choice. I was born in and believed it 100%. I remember arguing with someone that the new system would probably come around 1984, and if it didn't, then I'd leave because I'd know it wasn't going to be true. And then, just like us all, we all, carried on listening to the lies and stayed in. I guess I was stupid because everything I did wrong, I would go to the elders and tell them because I couldn't sit there with a bad conscience, which was so, in hindsight, so stupid. But I would sit and tell the elders everything I ever did wrong, which was rather frequent because I did like having boyfriends.
Oh, yes. And how did they kind of react to you? Were they kind to you, or how were they?
Well, it wasn't even having sex, to be honest. It was messing about. I didn't have sex. That was the weird thing. It was just any messing about, and I go and tell them. Yeah, they were kind, but they'd grill you so much. And I remember one elder turning around and saying to me, "I can't be in a room with you because you give me sexual feelings."
Oh my goodness, really?
I was a young girl. I was a very young girl, and he was an elder, a lot older than me. Made me feel jolly uncomfortable. He said, "I can't be in a room with you because you make me have sexual feelings towards you after you've told me that." And it's like, thank you. That's just lovely. What a gorgeous thing to say to a young girl. So obviously then you feel very uncomfortable around that elder from then on in. But yeah, born in, I then married someone.
Sorry, how old were you? The elder said that to you.
Ooh, probably 15, 16, something like that. So not an age where you should be spoken to like that. Let's put it that way. So, and then I got married around 23. So I was a bit on the shelf because I didn't like anyone. There wasn't much choice. And then kind of just fell into marrying someone who, frankly, was not good husband material. So we split up time and time again. And now we're friends. We got 3 kids. We're friends now. We're fine. But he's not good husband material in any shape or form. And every time he did whatever he did wrong, which was pretty serious things, he was pretty appalling, I was told it was my fault. Obviously, if he's cheating, you're not providing enough sex for him. If he's doing this, he's an arsonist, he was all sorts of things. It was all my fault. I had to stay with him no matter what. And it got pretty scary, being married to him. It really did. And I left him because basically my children got older and sort of begged me to leave him. So I did, met someone else, a little bit of an overlap, as you do, met someone else who's absolutely lovely. But I always said to him, because obviously I then at that point got disfellowshipped, but I always said to him, I will go back to the religion. I do believe it. And then as time went by, one of my friends woke up and I messaged him saying, why haven't you come to visit me? And he said, oh, I didn't want to, I'm an apostate. I was like, I don't care, just come round. And then from then on in, my whole world got brighter, because then he came round and he started telling me about about Jehovah's Witnesses, and what's the word? What's the bloody word? The United Nations. And I just couldn't believe. I just couldn't believe it, because we were brought up, the United Nations were hell on earth, weren't they? They were awful, they were dreadful. We would have no part of it. And I couldn't believe it. And I was doing research and it was like, I've been brainwashed, totally brainwashed, which we've all had that moment, haven't we?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. But then, from then on in, I wanted to do something rebellious against the religion. I had to do something. And I was married to a lovely man, so I wasn't going to cheat or anything like that. But I said to him, look, I've got to take some power back. I've got to do something against the religion. Just stand up for myself in some way. And that was going on phones as a dominatrix. I'd always seen dominatrix as I was a witness. If there was any dominatrix on TV, I would be glued. I thought they were incredible. But it wasn't my nature, so I wasn't ever going to think I was going to be one. But I thought I could on the phones. And fortunately for me, my husband helped me with what to say and how to be. And I just loved it. I just found my niche in life. I just found this is amazing, because I'm not like a harsh, screamy, shouty dominatrix. That's not my nature, never will be. I found there was a place out there for a more gentle dominatrix, which sounds really weird because it sounds quite the opposite of what it is. I found I had lots of gentlemen coming to me that wanted to be dressed as sissies. And they needed a gentle hand just to guide them, tell them how pretty they look, tell them how to put their stockings on, tell them how to walk, tell them how to hold themselves. And it was just beautiful. And from then on in, that has been my career. And then basically somebody rented a flat for me so I could meet people, so I could meet him and dress him. And then I purchased a building, and that's what I have now. I have 3 stories, and I have different rooms and different levels. I have my favourite room, which is my sissification room. And I have dresses and underwear and wigs and makeup and nails and heels and stockings. And they come in and they just transform. They feel beautiful. There's something totally different. But from then on in, their business has taken a turn towards weddings. It's amazing. I love my job. Basically, now people come to me and they spend like 3 or 4 hours. I have a makeup artist with me as well, and she'll do their makeup for them. We'll dress them beautifully. We'll have a little hen do as well. They have a little hen do. They dress up. They've got the champagne and everything. Oh, it's amazing. It's so much fun. We just giggle and laugh a lot because it's just lovely. As well as for the actual ceremony, I find they do get quite emotional because it means so much to them that they're dedicating themselves to me, because obviously the wedding isn't a proper genuine wedding. It's they're dedicating themselves to me as their mistress. Okay, so we have proper walking down the aisle. The cellar of my building has been transformed into a chapel, and they have an aisle they walk down. We have a pulpit, we have rings, we have everything. And then at the end of it, I normally tread on their head.
Okay.
Thank
Not
you.
very hard, I assume.
Exactly. But it's just gaining dominance over them. It's being in charge, letting them know, in the wedding photos, I will be treading on your head at some point, and that's the way it is. It's me taking control of them. I own them basically now, which sounds jolly weird to people, but
it sounds like a cross between sort of the picture of a dominatrix that one might already have in their mind, crossed with a finishing school.
Yes. Funny enough, I call it my name, and then finishing school for harlots, because I call them all my harlots. So that's really weird that's exactly what it is, a finishing school.
You're obviously doing a good job of it, if other people outside of the community can suss that out.
Yeah, they can. I mean, I had to, because obviously I've got loads of wedding dresses for all different sizes. I've got a whole rack of different wedding dresses, and I go into the charity shop locally quite often, and there's only so many times you can say, I'm buying a dress for a friend.
Yes, and a completely different sized friend every time as well.
Exactly. Now, I told the lady, and she was fabulous. She said, can I join in? Can I be a part of it? This is amazing. And where are you based? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it's private. But she's like, every time there's big shoes or anything like that, she'll phone me up. So it's fabulous. But everybody that I tell about it is quite excited, because it is beautiful. It is a lovely thing. And obviously, I do normal dominatrix things as well. I cane, I've got cages galore, I do suspension and different things like that, which is hard to get your head around initially. Why would I hurt someone? Why would I want to hurt someone when this person has probably become a good friend to me? Because you form a relationship. But I do understand it now. I do understand that some people need pain, and a lot of the people that need the pain have experienced pain in their childhood. They've been beaten, different things like that, and then they come to me because the only way, there's no sexual satisfaction in pain or anything like that. It's not about that, but the only way they can feel more is by being hurt. But at least in this environment, I'm hurting them in a controlled way. I would never harm them. It's not too much. A lot of it is blag. I talk the talk. I'm saying to them, right, I'm going to hurt you, you're going to get this. And, it's talking the talk rather than just incessantly hurting them, which could be dangerous. So a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. A lot of it is. Exactly. It is.
So how did people find you? How did you get started in the first place? I understand that being raised a witness, very conformist, very tight kind of structure, what you can and can't do, gender roles very tightly controlled. How did you first get started and get your first, I don't know if we'd call them customers?
Yeah, clients, customers. I call them my chickens, actually. My chickens, and they kind of know themselves as my chickens. Now, I don't know why it doesn't, not mistressy again. I am the crappiest mistress ever, but it works.
It's quite endearing, isn't it? I get the feeling that there's quite almost a maternal kind of.
Oh, it is very much so. Very much so. They know. I mean, we talk most days on text to a lot of them, or email. They're very much in my life, and I'm very much in their life. And a lot of the time, it's wives. I'll send them to me because the wives can't cope with them dressing. So the wives, no, it's not a sexual service I provide. It's a dressing service, and they will send them my way. A lot of the wives know. Sometimes the wives will even pay for them as their birthday, then they come and see you. But how did I get started? Okay, back to that question. It was just, I had to get some power back. I had to do something rebellious. I don't know what it was, because my husband was like, what are you on about, sort of thing. And I said, I just feel I have to gain some power back. And it was just purely going on the phones. So I earned quite a considerable amount of money just talking to people, telling them, just basically making them write prayers to me so they could worship me, which sounds jolly weird, I know, but they like that. So making them write prayers to me, making them recite things, and it was just purely on the phone. And then people started saying, I want to meet you. And obviously I was a little nervous because, you know, I don't know these people. But now I've just got lots and lots of customers, and it's growing all the time. It's just fabulous. It's great. It's great. I've got as I say, I've got 3 different stories in my building. And my favourite room is definitely my sissy room. It's got all of my wedding things in it. So it's so exciting for them to be a princess for the day, because I've got princess dresses as well as wedding dresses. So some of them come and they're just princesses in sissy pink dresses, and I call them fairy tale princesses. And prance around, and I take lots of pictures of them, and they feel pretty for the day, and they've got sparkles all over their face, and they're just like a young girl, I guess. They're acting up like a little princess going to a like birthday party. So it's harmless fun, but it's absolutely incredible because I can let them be what they want to be. Like, I couldn't be in the religion. I can let them have a secret life. It's this life, and they know I hold that secret dear. I would never tell anyone what they're doing. I would never tell anyone about any individual what they're doing, but they come to me and they get to lead a secret life and then shower it all away and walk out the door as a man.
I think that's the lovely thing about this. It sounds like a really loving and kind, but also, you know, what you're providing is the strictness and the structure, because that's what some people want. So, you know, having to tread on the head at the end of the wedding or write prayers to you, or, you know, all the other things that you might do to them or make them do is what they want. But it's just this acceptance. It's not yours or mine or anybody else's to say whether somebody else's predilection is appropriate, or, you know, as long as it's consenting adults, it's just to be accepted. That's all anybody really wants, is to be accepted.
That's what I feel I'm giving them. I'm giving them acceptance. I would never laugh at some of the things, although sometimes it gets jolly hard. I've got one gentleman, he's so gorgeous, and he dresses up as a girl, but he writes songs for me and he dances them, and you should see his dancing with his arms, and I've got to sit there, and we have to light candles in front of the altar, okay, and I've got to sit there and be serious during it when it's hysterically funny. It's hysterically funny, and I couldn't offend him and laugh. However, that one particular gentleman, it's so difficult because his dancing and the lyrics he wakes up for me as well, but he spends his time writing these songs, planning his dance routine for me. So it would be dreadful if I laughed. It would be dreadful. It's emotional for him. He writes me poetry, and he's so lovely. But so I sit there, poker faced, enjoying every moment because it's so beautiful. But it is hysterically funny at the same time.
At the end of the day, you're a human being as well, and
exactly.
You know, most of us aren't used to that situation where somebody's performing a song and a dance and a poem that they've written for you. So sometimes I think a lot of us laugh out of kind of nervousness, or just it's an unusual situation. It just is.
It is. But I guess I have a lot of unusual situations in my life, which makes my life so much more colourful. It's exciting. It's fun. I never know what one day is going to throw at me or the next. You know,
horrible.
It's wonderful. I always say I've got the best job in the world. I have got the best job in the world.
And some people are always so happy and so fulfilled.
Oh yeah, totally. It's such a rebellion because obviously my family found out what I do for work. It's great fun because they're Jehovah's Witnesses. And they now have me as the poster girl for what will happen to you if Satan gets hold of you. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of that. It's like, yeah, pull me up there. Because my mother basically went on Facebook, found a picture of me, work picture, and said, this is my enhanced daughter. And it's like, what a weird thing to say, because I've never had any enhancements done at all. So I just thought, just a little bitchy dig. It's like, I've never had any enhancements done. I'm not like that. You know, if you have, who cares?
If somebody has, there's nothing wrong with it.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if anyone does. But it was just like a little bitchy dig, because I know full well my sisters and my mother like attention, and they would be so envious of my pictures, my presence, you know, the fact that I've got quite a lot of followers on Twitter, and how popular I am. And because in the dominatrix world, I'm doing quite well. I go on tours, I do lots of things. I'm quite popular, thankfully. It's gone quite well for me. So I know they'd be so envious. It's so great. I have people worshipping me. I am their God, which sounds jolly odd to some people and they won't understand it. But for these people, it means such a lot because it's not real. It's not real. It's smoke and mirrors. But to them, every day they will write poetry or dedicate something to me. And it means such a lot to them to do it. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so lovely, you know? And I'll send them a horrible message back.
It's a proper job, isn't it? Because you have to get into people's psyche. You have to understand what they want. And they don't always want to tell you what they want. They want just to know, to tell them what to do.
A lot of the time, the people that dress say they don't do it for themselves. They do it because I find men attractive dressed as women, because they feel like it's too kinky, but they like it. So I've got to tell them, this is what I like. You're doing this for me. You're here as my servant, and I want you to do this. I want you to dress up. And then they will. I want you to do, you know, to walk up and down the room and teach you deportment. I want you to learn how to put makeup on, different things like that. So a lot of them can't cope with their own kink, and it is very difficult when they walk in sometimes because I haven't got a clue what they want. I haven't got a bloody clue. But I start talking to them, start watching what they like. It's a case of the minute they walk in, just study them. I just watch them. I touch their skin to see if they've got particularly sensitive skin. I don't know, just different things like that. I suggest putting stockings on, get the reaction from that. Pretty much all of them go, yeah, okay. If you wish,
they probably know what you do. You know, they probably come to you because they've got an idea of what your style is as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they can see that I'm not going to be shouting and screaming. I very much tell them what to do. Don't get me wrong. I can be more stern with them, but the idea is they don't want someone harsh that's going to be shouting and screaming at them, and that's not my nature. But the having to learn about the pain thing took me quite a lot, because it's all very well dressing them as men, but to understand about the pain was really difficult. That took me quite a while. Now I love it, and a lot of them are growing in the desire for pain, weirdly, because the endorphins you get with it, the different feelings you get with it. And then if I do have to hurt them quite severely, I then need to sit them down for 15 minutes so they can come down off the high that the pain has given them. I can't just rinse them out. I have to sit them down and let them calm down, because it's like they're on drugs. That's what it is. When you give them lots of pain, if I get like a caning session at normally about 45 minutes and then 15 minutes calm down session. So, but it's hard to grasp. I'm great at caning now. I love it. It's fabulous fun. They love it. I love it. It's wonderful. And different things like that. Leaving someone in a cage, leaving someone in a cage all night. What's that about? What's that?
Did you go for some kind of training, or have you've just learned this through interactions?
Yeah, I didn't. I've actually had people come and ask me that. Did I get trained ever as a mistress? No, I'm weirdly slave-led in a sense, because it's just the interactions I've had with my subs. My subservience has taught me really totally. So people have come to me and said, where did you learn how to be a mistress? This is very different from anything I've ever experienced before. And I always like to I'm very proud of the fact that I've never been trained. I've trained myself. And so when people come to me, it's a total different experience than going to other mistresses. I have worked with other mistresses before, but I never liked their way of doing things. And also, they're always so loud and so raucous that I can't be heard at all behind them, because they're so loud, and they have this set speech that they say to everyone that comes along. And I'm like, how can you treat everyone the same? Every person in my mind is different. I have a different relationship with everyone that walks through the door. I don't plan what I'm going to do with them, because I don't know where that day is going to take me. I don't know where they're going to take me. We just roll with it. Every day is roll with it, see what the person is like. So, but yeah, no, I don't work well with other mistresses, mainly because they're too noisy. They're too raucous. They shout all the time.
You put a lot of emotional and other kind of labour in to give somebody an experience that they really enjoy and appreciate.
Yeah. I pretend it's purely for me. It's purely for me, but obviously it's not. It's all, like I said, lots of smoke and mirrors. That's all it is. But it gives them something they can't get elsewhere, particularly the pain thing. I've found with my little chickens, the more I get into the pain side of it, the more they get into the pain side of it, because obviously different things I'm doing, they like more and more. I'm teaching them, like, I've got electrics. I do electric stimulation on them. I electrocute them, and they love to be electrocuted. But I know how to do it properly. I've researched it. I've found out. And a lot of the things, I've got a lot of doctors come and see me. I don't know why I've got so many doctors come and see me. So they'll teach me a lot of medical treatments. I mean, a lot of people ask me for needle play and things like that. I couldn't do it. I would cry. There's certain things I can't do. Lots of things, I will only do what I like as a mistress, because I think you can tell. If it was things like that, I'd be crying. I'd be so useless. So I only do things I enjoy as a mistress. I'm very, very strict to keep my rules, that if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, because there's so many different paths you can go down with it. And it's like, no, I will never, some mistresses have sex with their clients. I would never, ever in a million years. To me, it's about being desired, but never being, they're never going to conquer me. But also, a lot of the time, it's not necessarily that they fancy me. It's that they want to be me. That's what it is. They want to be me. I have to teach them to move their arms the way I move my arms. But they can't. It's difficult, because obviously they're a different gender. But they want to pretend they can walk in a ladylike fashion. And some of them have got amazing legs, and some of them walk beautifully in heels, far better than I do, I can tell you. But then some of them also have got designer wardrobes at home that they can't show anyone. They've got amazing wardrobes, but they're all secretive, hidden in their car, or they're single and they've got a wardrobe and it's just beautiful clothes. So a lot of the time when they turn up, they've got luggage, because they want to show me these clothes. They want to have a chance to wear them. They want to be photographed in them, because they know I'm never going to send the photos anywhere else. They're just going to go straight to them. Mm-hmm. They want to be photographed, and they want me to colour the photo, make them look pretty and things like that. And then it's just lovely for them, because they spend a fortune on clothes. I've also got an awful lot of people that can't have the clothes at home but want to buy them. So I've got boxes and boxes galore. Some under my stairs, some up in my spare room, and I've got boxes and boxes with their names on of all their clothes and their wigs, their jewelry. So it's just lovely. Different outfits arrive for them in my home, but I've got Amazon wish list, and they say to me what they want to put on my Amazon wish list, that clothes for them. Then they order them and they come to my house, and I take them to work. And then the next time they turn up, they get to open them all and try them on. It's just lovely. It's so exciting.
Oh my gosh, we all know how lovely that feeling is.
I know.
Oh, bless. So do you give them any kind of jobs or tasks to do in between sessions as well? Does this seep into their real life at all? Or is this purely an experience that happens on your premises and then nothing else? Then, they live their normal, whatever it is, life that's different to what they do with you?
Yes, they have tasks to do. Not necessarily tasks. I give them tasks sometimes. A lot of them are in chastity, so they're caged. So they're walking around with a cage on, shall we say. A lot of them will do different jobs. I get lots of letters sent to me, and I've got a wish list on Amazon, so I get gifts most days turn up as well. So they buy me gifts that I want. I just put them on my wish list. They randomly send me gifts, so I get things turn up most days, thankfully. And a lot of them are in touch daily, but I guess normally I would do more tasks, but through lockdown, I've been saying to them, my head is not in the right place. So you have to just, we'll keep in touch, but I'm not going to give you any tasks at the moment. But sometimes it'll be stupid things like go and clean the Hoover out for their wife.
Right.
I'm like, come on, cook dinner tonight. Do cook, different things like that. Because I'm like, I support their wives as well. And although some of the wives don't know about me, I get them doing different jobs. They've never so much as seen my boobs. They would never kiss me. I would be furious. They know full well if they tried anything like that with me, they would be in so much trouble. It's not about that. It's weirdly nothing about that. I know of people before that have been pretending to be a mistress and then have thought, well, this is a bit difficult, I'll go to kiss them, and the gentleman would be in shock because that's not what you go to see an escort if you want that. If you go to see me, you get a totally different. Obviously I advertise in the same places, so the lines get blurred in that way, which is jolly awkward for me. I have to send lots of messages to people saying, you need an escort, love, don't bother coming to see me. So, but no, the people that come and see me are very serious about knowing that they would never want to have sex or anything like that. It's not about that. And they come and see me with a very set mindset as to what they want. I have to figure that out, obviously, but also our relationships evolve over time. And like I said, they might, I've got someone, Chloe, she used to come and see me and she used to just simply want to be caned. Now she dresses and now she's become a wimp and can't cope with the pain because she's become too girly. So it's different people, the relationship evolves. She was purely caning at first, for ages she was caning. Now she's Chloe and she just cannot take the pain. And
so you let them grow into themselves as well. You let their needs develop.
Yes, totally. You have to read each person as an individual. You can't say any two people are the same. None of them are. I've got a vac bed, okay? My vac bed is a big bed.
I've heard of this.
Say that?
I have heard of this.
You've heard of this? They're really cool. They're really cool. The vac bed, you put the person in a like a sleeping bag of latex where all they've got is a little tube that they can breathe, okay? And then you suckle the air out with a vacuum. They stay in there, guess how long for?
I've only ever seen one in a picture, so an hour?
3 hours on average.
I could not be quiet or still that long.
No, but they float off into subspace. That's what it is. They float off into another world. They say it's like being on clouds. They're floating on clouds and they lose all concept of time and they just float off. It's just incredible. I have to sit, it's a nightmare for me. I get my dressing gown and my slippers because I'm not going to be cold all that bloody time. So I get my dressing gown and my slippers, okay? And I have to sit there and watch them because obviously I have to listen for their breathing. I have to be really, I have to study them because if their breathing goes too fast, I would get them out. So I have to just watch them the entire time. So it's a nightmare for me. But however, 3 hours is the average time they spend in there and they've no clue of any concept of time. It's really weird. Subspace is a thing and I like to send my people there. Electrocution can send them there. That's a red subspace. That's an exciting subspace. It's a weird world, isn't it? Weird. I've had to learn all this.
It's amazing. And what's really striking me as you're talking is the overlaps with other things. So obviously this is, I mean, undeniably it's in a sexual context. But the overlap with the finishing school, with the feeling cared for and loved, the overlap with even a spa day is where my thoughts are going with the back bed. It's just really, really interesting how intertwined all these parts of ourselves are for such non-sexual things to suddenly become sexual in that context.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, the caning, there's nothing sexual about it at all. There's nothing sexual about it at all. But it's for the endorphins, isn't it? And the vac bed, endorphins.
But it doesn't hurt to have a very pretty lady in a very nice outfit. They're present at the same time, who they choose to believe is also, you know, getting off on the situation. You know, whether that's true or not, part of the role play is that they're doing it to please you.
Oh, exactly. And I do like to seduce them. That's the idea, is I tease and I taunt them. That's the idea. I want to seduce you. I want you to be totally wrapped around my little finger. And with gentlemen, that's totally easy, isn't it? Jolly easy.
Yeah. I'm not arguing with that.
You are a woman. You know how easy that is. All you've got to do is glance your eyes at them and then putty, you know. Spanking as well. That's another thing. Spanking. They love it. Cannot get enough. There's just all these wonderful things I can do in my chambers, and
I love it.
Go home so happy. They're euphoric. And I am as well, because it's like, look what I've done today. I've just had the best day. I've made your life really happy, and I've also got a new friend, you know, because they do become friends. I'm super close. Most of them I message every day. So some of them it's not possible, but most of them I message every day, and we're just super close. So I adore them. So it's good fun.
I love it. What advice would you have, or any words for anybody who's just left the organisation and is looking to branch out into something exciting? They've got half a mind that this is where they would want to go, or maybe there's somebody who would want to visit somebody like you. Maybe they're still in the organisation and fighting, you know, against everything that they've been taught about apostates, and they're watching this from inside the organisation. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, for people inside the organisation that wanted to maybe visit, I'd say just do it. But they're not. They would find it really hard. That would be such a fight, because one day I will have a witness that I recognise walking through my door, and I will be so lovely to them. Because I'll be so happy for them. I will try and sow seeds of apostasy, I must admit.
Just being themselves is enough. You know, what a huge breakaway from the organisation to just go, I want to do this, and do it.
There will be people in the organisation that have the feelings of wanting to maybe cross-dress, wanting to experience being caged, or all of these things. And if there's any ladies out there that would like to go down the route of dominatrix, I have tried training some ex-JWs and some people. It's not as easy as it appears. It's not that easy. It's quite difficult. I've not had much success with training people before. I don't know. It's watching the person. It's the studying the person, not just thinking I'm going to go in there and dominate someone. That's not my way. So when I train someone to do it my way, not just go in there and, all right, I'm going to whip them. It's not like that. That's not what it's about. You have to form a bond with them.
There is no script for unique individuals.
Exactly. So it's hard to see that. If anyone wanted to get in touch and wanted to learn more about doing it, I'd be fine about that, particularly if they're ex-JW, because I'd be like, go girl. I'd be behind them all the way. So it's just, why not try it? You might love it. Why not try it? It's fantastic money, and it's fantastic time. It really is.
And you really helped somebody and sent them away happy.
Yeah, you have. It's not the ideas of seeing this horrible woman just abusing someone. Some of them do want to just be on the floor and be kicked. They do. But I understand their mentality. And I'm talking to them rather than just kicking them solidly all the time, because I don't want to have a sore foot, for one thing. So, so it's talking all the time, just saying to them, you know, you're a lazy little slut or something like that. Get on the floor, I'm going to kick you. So it's just, wow. I know, but fun.
So how did you become a witness?
I was born in. My parents had found the truth when they were just a young family, starting a young family. And so my whole life, it's what I was raised in and believed until I didn't.
So were you baptized?
Yes, I was baptized at 16.
Mm-hmm.
16. Yeah. And
Young.
I tell people I believed it hook, line, and sinker. Like I didn't question. I did not question. And it wasn't actually until I had sex for the first time, of course, which is like one of the gravest sins to them. But there was just something. I went and hung out with this person, and we ended up having sex, and it was a huge awakening for me. It connected me to a part of myself that I had been so cut off from. And when I experienced that, it felt like, wow, no, this is something I should be in control of. I should say when and where and who and how, as
Yeah.
opposed to letting other people outside of me dictate that.
What an amazing epiphany. So how old were you when that happened?
That was at 23. And at that point, I had that epiphany, but I still didn't know what that meant for the rest of my life, as far as how that would affect everything changing for me. So for, I would say, this next 6 months into like my 24th year, I, told on myself, spoke to the elders, tried to repent, and they had an elder's wife study with me. And it was during that studying with this new awareness that I realized, oh, I don't believe so much of what I had just blindly gone along with for my whole life.
Right. So you were raised a witness, you were baptized at 16, and then around 7 years later, you had sex for the first time. Was that with a witness or a non-witness?
No, it's like an old high school friend that I had like reconnected with. And prior to that, I know you had been asking like what type of witness I was. Like I think this is the most important thing, and I think you touched on something. Inside the organization, it's a lot about how things appear. And so I don't know if I appeared to be the ideal witness. My family maybe had struggles, and other people may have judged that and maybe not seen, but inside of me, I thought I had a great relationship with Jehovah. I thought it was the truth. I was very much on board until I did something that was initiated just of my own desire or inner knowing. And that's when everything fell. So it just really was like, I was really in it. If you ask me, I wasn't like, oh, I was always trying to do little things here and there to get in trouble. No, I had pioneered at different times. I'd gone to Bethel. I'd done all the things. You asked me, I was a great Jehovah's Witness, but that was until I did something of my own volition, and things crumbled pretty quickly once you have that awareness of yourself.
Yeah. And you used your body for something that you wanted to do.
It was like the first time I had done something that was outside of the shoulds and allows. Before that, it was always, I'm doing exactly what I'm told because that's what I'm told. It just was, I was raised in it. That's the only thing I knew.
So you felt enough overwhelming guilt and shame to go to the elders? You said you told on yourself?
I didn't feel guilt. Again, I just knew it was the process. I actually didn't feel guilty, and that was something interesting and something I had questions about. And actually, I think what kind of led to the downfall of the beliefs, because I had been told that's what I would feel if I did something like that. And then I did it, and I had quite the opposite. I felt more connected to myself and to like the amazingness that is life, and like what God has just given me inherently inside myself, and so I had the complete exact opposite. And then that kind of, but I knew what I was supposed to do. When I do that, I go and tell the others, right? That's what you're supposed to do. So I went and did what I was supposed to do. But I tell you, during that 6 months where they were trying to like rehabilitate me and like get me to study, just everything I read in the publications and everything just rang less and less true to my core, which I
Yeah.
was now aware of.
So what happened after that? So you've had this epiphany. So what kind of led from that to getting disfellowshipped, I guess, or did
Mhm.
stuff happen in between that?
No, that was pretty much it. I mean, they were telling me a lot of things to, don't listen to R&B, that'll get you more worked up again. Just watch out who you're hanging around, watch what you're watching. I mean, they were really just trying to get me back on the straight and narrow, according to them.
R&B is a bit good though.
Right? And it does get me going. They're right about that.
Same bit of Drew Hill.
So, but I'm having just all these realizations, and I do understand that this is happening, and I'm realizing that I can't just sit there and act like I believe it anymore, like I'm part of it anymore. So I didn't want to disassociate because of the implications of being labeled apostate.
Mm-hmm.
This is a decision now. I don't know, perhaps going back and doing it again, I would have wanted to be more forthcoming about the fact that I just didn't believe anymore. But I just thought at the time that I'll just go and do more of what I wanted, and they can disfellowship me for it. I'll be very clear and honest, and they can just disfellowship me. So that's what I did. And, I told my family, my parents, and it was just pretty quick at that point. My dad said, well, if you need help with your car or some emergency, you can call me. But they were pretty clear from the beginning that the relationship would completely change from then on.
Yeah. Was that hard on you?
Yeah, it was such a wild time because there's such this amazing thing happening inside of you. There's this connection to yourself that you've never felt before, and that's all good and positive. And yet at the same time, you're losing your whole community and family, everything you've ever known.
Yeah.
So it was such a diverse time for me, because I was happy about just personally my development, and yet having to deal with the fallout of everyone else's opinions and actions around me.
Yeah, yeah. So what led from you at that point then discovering it sounds like you've done quite a variety of sex work. So how did you get into that, and what led there?
So I was, I had a corporate job that I was working even before I got disfellowshipped, and I continued to do that for a while after. And then the stress of it was just stressing me out. It was not just the stress of the job itself, but just the office politics and the ethics of the company itself were just physically making me sick from the stress. So I knew I had to leave that. So I did. I left the corporate job. And, whenever we leave jobs, we always have a little bit of time and space that we've accounted for. But beyond that, if something else doesn't pan out, you got to do whatever to just get by and continue on. And, I think, so I had started with camming. Like I said, it was during like the Tumblr era. So there was like girls on there that were talking about it. And I was like, oh, I could do that. I liked sexting. I like flirting. So I'm like, oh, I could definitely do that. And like I said, I didn't have any shame around my sexuality anymore. I thought it was this amazing thing and this great way to connect with yourself and others. So I started doing that. And I think through all my sex work, I was never, the most successful I ever was when I was sugaring. So that's more of like a arrangement type relationship. People have different ways of doing it, but that was the most lucrative for me. But I did start out with camming, and that was hit and miss. Like I said, some days would be great, and some days were, not worth the time I put in. But it was fun and interesting. And again, it was like another way for me to explore my emerging sexuality, my understanding of my sexuality. Yeah, and then there was some, other avenues in there. some IRL work. And then, like I said, the most
IRL,
lucrative
sorry,
in
do
real
you mean
life work. Yes. Yes. The stuff where you get into a tricky legal area. So yeah, and then, like I said, the arrangements or the sugaring is what was the majority of my sex work and was the most lucrative, and I liked it because it was you could develop intimacy as opposed to like when you would do one-off out calls. It was kind of like you had to like fake it real quick, you know, not fake what you were doing, but the intimacy, you would have to like find a way to like conjure it up real quick. And I felt with the sugaring, it was like it just felt more natural, and you could take more time to build the intimacy and an ongoing relationship.
Yeah, that's
And
really.
now I'm back to, sorry, but I'm back to I'm learning OnlyFans now, so we're gonna see how that goes. It's something,
Cool.
you know, even though I'm doing other types of work now, I do intuitive consulting. The intimacy part is something I still think is so important. And I think people are still wanting that so much, and the connection and having spaces where you can practice intimacy, you know, and I'm really understanding. So if someone makes a misstep, you know, I'm not instantly like, oh no, cut off. It's like, okay, you know, this is what happened. I try and model consent and communication even in these alternative ways of relating.
Yeah, well, that's key, isn't it? Consent and
Yeah.
communication is the bedrock of effective and non-exploitative sex work, really.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
I was going to ask you whether you had any kind of niche or fetish or kink or anything that you catered to, or whether it was just kind of, you know, straight sort of, not, you know,
Yeah.
I don't really know how to phrase it without offending somebody, but
you know, I always just showed up. Yes, there's so many flavors to choose from.
Yeah.
I always just showed up as myself. I think that
Yeah.
was kind of the thing, and I think that's what lent itself so well to like a sugar baby relationship. It was just really authentic. I just showed up as myself, and within that, when people would express certain desires or things they wanted to explore, I would, you know, find a way to accommodate those and experiment with them if I didn't know, or if I was versed in it, be like, oh yeah, let's get this and this and this, and we can do it, you know. So I just always feel like I'm showing up as myself in whatever, and from that, we can try so many different things.
And yourself sounds like a really compassionate and open-minded person. And I can definitely see that being something that a lot of people need to connect with.
I think that's at the root of anyone using sex work or utilizing those services, is that desire for connection and understanding. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's why it's something that, even though I entered it kind of out of a need for more cash flow at the time, it kept me, and is something that I still find very valuable, because it's an amazing thing when you can see someone experiencing intimacy and a connection without judgment for possibly the first time in their life, or just something that they rarely get. So it's like a big need for them.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any experiences that stand out as funny or different or or negative? Any that particularly stand out?
You know, one time I was getting picked up from, I do a variety of work and have over my lifetime. But at one point, I was cleaning a house, and I called a Lyft when I was done because I was going to get taken home. And the Lyft driver happened to be one of my former clients. We kind of just gave each other like an acknowledging nod and then sat in silence for the rest of the drive. But it was just interesting. It's just, this is the thing. I think while that's comical, it also just shows that like these are just people in your community, in your neighborhood, who would really benefit from this type of work being decriminalized. If you have to legalize it to regulate it because you want a piece of the money, okay, fine. But decriminalizing it is just like, to me, the ultimate, because it's a very human thing, it's a very necessary thing, and it's so honest and straightforward, you know? It's very clear on what the person needs and what you're comfortable with assisting them in. And yeah, I do hope that the more visibility that we're having around this and the conversations around this, that it does lead to a more understanding and acceptance of the needs and benefits of it. And if it's something that's morally not right for you, then you don't have to use those services. But there are other people out there who need it for various reasons. And, you know, who are we to block people from what they actually need and want?
I was going to ask if you've got any advice or tips or, you know, any safety measures that you would recommend for anybody if we're not suggesting anybody takes up sex work. I'm
Right.
completely neutral in this.
Legally, we are not allowed to.
We're not advocating, but we're also not judging.
It's so funny that it's this thing that exists and people just want to act like it doesn't. It just still blows my mind. It's like,
what they call it, the
like,
oldest.
don't look behind the curtain, you know.
But you know, what would you say keeps you safe?
It's something that I had to learn in all areas of my life, and it's trusting my intuition. And really understanding how my body cues myself, you know, what is that feeling that I get? What is that tightness that I get sometimes? What is it trying to tell me? Is it just, you know, uncomfortability, or do I need to leave right now? You know, and that's actually something that I do in my just personal consulting, which is, you know, separate from sex work, is helping people who have had something that has cut them off from their intuition and trusting themselves and understanding how that works. I really encourage people to take time and tune into it and really reconnect with it and trust yourself again. Because, you know, especially in the organization we came from, we were just told you couldn't trust yourself. And in fact, trust everyone around you but yourself.
Yes.
And that took so long for me to really, really heal from. And that's what I care to help other people with now, is just, there's no way you would be here now at this time and space if you did not have everything inside of you necessary to take you all the way.
That is such a good point. I don't think we pick up on that nearly enough, that we were taught the heart is treacherous, and do not lean upon your own understanding, and man's wisdom, not God's, that kind of thing. And yeah, we're always having our intuition suppressed. And then if you did get a funny feeling about somebody at the hall, we've learned since leaving that was probably pretty justified, because there were some shady characters sometimes around, not suggesting all are, but they certainly existed. But we were always taught that we can trust the brotherhood, we can trust the brothers and sisters. So we had, at the same time as suppressing our own intuition, this kind of open, naive trust of those around us.
Right.
I think that's a valid thing I've heard in ages.
Yeah, and it's there. You just have to take the time to build up that relationship again. It's really a relationship with yourself, and it's really beautiful and so powerful when you reconnect with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at some kind of a prehistoric level almost, we're able to pick on cues and body language that our conscious mind doesn't see, but
there's so much sensory input that we're getting that is not on the conscious level, that is happening automatically within us.
Yeah, exactly. So YouTube would probably kill me if I put up your OnlyFans link, but would you want to give me a link to your intuitive counseling, did you say it's called?
Sure. Well, I'll give you my Twitter and my IG. So if you're wanting more OnlyFans and me just spouting off at the mouth, the Twitter is at Neanderthought, and like Neanderthal but thought. And then like that hoe over there, not
You
thought. Although there are some very deep thoughts on there. So, you know.
You are
And
equally dinosaurs crazy as I am, aren't you?
I truly go nuts over Jurassic Park. It's got all the answers for life in there, really, if you watch. And then my Instagram, where I do more consulting, you know what I mean. Is @_Emily.June_.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
And
that
I
was
do
amazing.
love to connect. So truly, if any of this has resonated with you, or you have questions or anything, I do love to connect. So please feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would love to talk to you again, and I would love to meet up. And if we come to the States, if you ever come to Britain, then that would be amazing.
LA is here for you.
I was born in Jehovah, so my parents were they converted when they were adults. I would say that they both sort of had miracle conversions, what they saw as miracles by Jehovah's Witnesses intervening in their lives at a time when they were very down, and so that sort of got them into it. I was a very lucky kid that was born in as a Jehovah's Witness, because even though my mom was like a super duper pioneer Jehovah's Witness, my dad, he always sort of had one foot out the door with the Jehovah's Witnesses. He was a brick mason and helped run the masonry crews builds. So that also sort of gave him, the elders could only do so much to him because they needed him to help build the halls. So we kind of got lucky as kids. My dad came from a very hard childhood, abusive childhood. And I think he realized kind of he wasn't going to let certain things happen to his kids. So when it came to having worldly friends, we could have worldly friends. My mom hated it, but my dad would pull I'm the head of the household and I get to decide this. So we got to have sleepovers with worldly friends, not all the time, but it was enough to where it influenced us, right? Or at least it influenced me. I never got baptized, so I also got lucky there. I stayed in till I was about 18. I was sort of probably at about 16, my mom was like, you need to decide what you're going to do. And my decision for you is you're going to try to get baptized. And I just sort of had, compared to a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses stories, I had a lot of series of lucky breaks. So I studied, I went for the questions, and I was always a bit of a precocious kid. And I didn't really want to become a Jehovah's Witness. I was only doing it for my mom. And they asked me, oh, is there anything you have, that you still don't understand? I'd gotten through all the questions fine. And they're like, is there anything you don't understand? And I was like, disfellowshipping. I don't get why I can't talk to somebody who is doing this, who leaves the organization. And then me and the elders got into an argument where I was going to Bible scriptures. They were going to Bible scriptures. And I remember like it was yesterday, one of them just put his hand on my leg and tapped it and said, we don't think you're ready to be baptized yet. So I went to my mom and said, it's not me, it's them. They said I wasn't ready. So
don't you think that's ironic though, that you weren't ready to get baptized because you could beat them in a battle of the scriptures?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It was a win for me. So it was definitely ironic, but it was just sort of that also just kind of proved to me that I knew I was doing the right thing by not doing this. And when I was a kid, I was sort of, my mom had cancer for like a year and a half, was going in and out of hospital. So I was raised by this other woman, essentially, who was sort of my proxy mom at the time. And she had 2 daughters. And me and my brother, they were like our sisters, like our physical sisters. And I remember we were studying the Greatest Teacher book. That's what it was, Greatest Teacher book. And there was a chapter on like the Pharisees doing all this, needling Jesus and, following, every rule had to be followed. And my dad was like, one of the questions was, now who are the modern day Pharisees? And I remember I was like, the elders. And my mom was like, no, that's not, that's not the elders. There was the Catholic Church and all these other things. I was like, yeah, but the elders do this to everybody. They force you to follow the rules. And I had a conversation with the girl that I grew up with. And I remember she said her dad was an elder, and she was like, don't talk about that. And I was probably 11 or something like that, or 12. And I just remember when she told me that, I think that was kind of the day where I was like, so you're not allowed to even just ask the obvious questions. And so from that point on, I just never invested in. I kind of got lucky that I didn't go fully in. My two brothers, they both got baptized. They went fully in. They both got excommunicated. They both got disfellowshipped. And I just was lucky that didn't happen. So some people consider me a fake Jehovah's Witness because I never really fully went in, but I definitely had to deal with all the Jehovah's Witness garbage that comes with it and the aftermath of being raised a Jehovah's Witness. I could have a relationship with my mom. I've chosen not to, like a formal relationship because of how she treats my two brothers. And my mom's a wonderful woman, a very strong, she was a great mom. One thing that we never dealt with in our family was we didn't have mentally abusive parents outside of what the Jehovah's Witnesses force on you. But we had a very loving household, and we talked about feelings and all these other things. So my mom was a great mom, but she doesn't talk to my brother or my oldest brother. And so I had a conversation with her and just told her, look, you can't have the perfect relationship with your one son, then act like your other sons don't exist. Like, you don't get the cookie on this one. So it's hard, but she's got to deal with the consequences of her actions. And don't really have much of a relationship with my mom at this point. I helped organize ex-Jehovah's Witness meetup groups in from about 2003 until 2008, something like that. And that was something that I learned very quickly from, there were people who were leaving and they had huge problems. I got lucky that I didn't have that many problems. They would have massive problems. And one thing I would find was that Jehovah's Witnesses often don't get real world consequences for their actions, because people who leave go, I don't want anything to do with it. You spend this short period being obsessed with it. Then you kind of go like, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to cause any trouble. I'm just going to leave it. Worldly people, quote unquote, they have no clue what really is going on. So there's just another person at work that's a little quirky and weird. And that was one thing I learned from that, was just, if Jehovah's Witnesses probably start having real world consequences, then it becomes, I know that it can force them to go deeper in, but I think those sorts of things, especially when it comes to a mother's love for her son, or a father's love for his daughter, whatever it is, when you get that real world, I know it breaks my mom's heart, but that's the action you chose to do.
She's doing it.
And,
I'm sure you guys would have the door open if she came to you and said, you know what, I'm not going to shun any of you anymore. I'm just going to have a normal motherly relationship with all three of you.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys would go, yeah, welcome.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I got to hear the story about how your mom felt about, you going into your lifestyle that you were in there for a bit too. Because my parents weren't happy. But,
I think she might find out this via this route.
Oh shit, yeah. So she doesn't even know yet.
No, most people do. My ex-husband knows, and he tries to use it against me with the kids, but the kids know. I don't keep any secrets from them, and it just feels safer that way. My brother and sister know, but I don't think my mum does. I don't really mind. I don't really care if she does or she doesn't now. Like, how much more disappointing can I be anyway?
Yeah. I think that was for me, that was sort of the good thing, because I guess I was always a rebellious kid. At some point, my parents were just like, well, you're going to do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter what we say. So I think at some point they just kind of accepted that I was going to be the bad kid. But my dad was definitely the rebellious kind of You know, my dad one time cursed out the elders in the hall
Mm-hmm.
because they told him he shouldn't be seeing his disfellowshipped son. And he basically told them to fuck off and that he could see whoever he wanted to, and it was his goddamn son. And if they didn't like it, they should hit the bricks.
Good for him.
During a meeting, like just after a meeting. So everybody heard it too.
Kudos to your dad for that, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he did some, you know, I think when it came to certain things, he was sort of like other things, he let the elders push him around and kind of push us around. But I think that's definitely where I got a bit of the outspokenness when it came to the Jehovah's Witness stuff, because yeah, shit wouldn't happen to my dad, why would it happen to me? So when I sort of left at 18, I think I took the sort of standard Jehovah's Witness route, right? You get a girlfriend, you want to have sex, your parents won't let you have sex, so you move out and you move in together and you're going to get married and all this stuff. Thank God I didn't get married. You know, like, dated this girl, she ended up cheating on me or whatever, and that sort of made us break up, and I had to move back in with my parents. And fortunately, they were understanding. I think they were just happy for me to be broken up with this girl because they didn't like her for good reason. And they let me live there, and I just said, hey, look, I'm just going to stay here for like a year and I'm going to move out on my own. And they said, yeah, you know, as long as you go to like 1 or 2 meetings to keep up appearances, we don't care. You can do whatever you want to do. So from that point in my life, they were kind of cool with me not being a Jehovah's Witness, and it was my decision to make. I moved out, I think, like, you know, most people, you go into a vice industry a lot of times because there's nothing else to do. You know, that's the one that accepts you and that you sort of fall into a little bit. So I was living with this girl just as roommates. I had moved in with her because she needed a roommate, and she was the first woman that I really met that was very sex positive. And I remember I had a conversation with her, and she was 24 at the time, and she was like, how many people have you had sex with? I'm like, maybe like 10 or something. And I'm like, how many of you? And she's like, I stopped counting at 100, and that was when I was 19. And I remember just being shocked by this, you know, like, holy shit, 100 people, like, at 19. And she sort of, I think, she helped kind of school me on the sexuality stuff and give me a much different perspective. And she worked at a porn company. And this porn company was like, it was a startup. It did video on demand. So at the time, they were like the Netflix of porn. You know, they supplied, if it was Penthouse, Playboy, any gay studio, any porn studio you can think of, the porn studio would send the VHS, DVD, hard drive, whatever they had the content on. This porn company would digitize it. And so often this roommate too, I mean, there's so many crazy stories for her, but I would sometimes come home from work. I had a construction job at the time, and she'd just be watching gay porn.
Right.
And you know, you're walking in as somebody fresh-eyed and you know, like, has never seen anything like this. Suddenly you're walking into a roommate just watching porn, just casually, you know, watching gay porn. And so she was in like, instead of doing construction, you should work where I work. And so I was like, yeah, fuck it. I mean, when you're a Jehovah's Witness too, I think you're always used to being an outcast. So what is working in porn? Or what is doing this? You're already used to being an outcast. You already know how to sort of push that out. And to be honest, it was like the easiest job I'd ever had in my life.
And they're very accepting, aren't they, those kind of communities, because they were also used to being outcasts. So, you know, quite accepting of people. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it was also a group of people, we were all freaks and geeks.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So what were you doing there?
So when I started there, I was basically just editing content that would get sent to us.
So a lot of porn then.
Yes. It was 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, pretty much nonstop. You're just editing porn.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, I think we had 2 10-minute breaks and an hour lunch. You're just nonstop. The porn's just going through. You're just editing it. Fortunately, I think a lot of people don't realize like how easy it is to edit porn.
Right.
And that was another thing. It was like gay porn was the best because gay porn always does the same things. You know, it's like blowjob, anal sex, blowjob, cum shot. It was like always the same thing. Versus straight porn, you'd have every sex act you could think of, you know. Then we would also have, the fun thing was we would have to decide what went in and what went out. So you'd kind of have to, you know, sometimes we'd be doing this and I would be like, well, you know, you're working on some fetish porn. And like, I have no clue what somebody who's into balloon porn wants to see. Like, I don't know. So I'd have to ask somebody and I'd be like, who cares? Just, you know, like, just pick some things. So
I was going to ask you that because, you know, to edit gay porn, presumably you'd have to have some idea of what's hot, and, you know, foot fetish porn or whatever it is, you'd have to have some idea of what's hot.
well, I think you know, sometimes we would get raw footage. That's where it becomes really hard. No pun intended, because you really have to sort of, you know, then you really have to make a bit of art out of it. A lot of times they would send it to us where it was already edited and we'd just be kind of editing down.
Right.
So after a while, you know, with like foot fetish porn, you sort of start to understand, particularly, right, you need to have the shot of her putting her foot right in front of camera. You know, you need to have the shot of the guy interacting with her foot in some way.
So do not cut those bits out.
Yeah. You know, so you start to kind of understand in certain porn films, you know, especially fetishes and stuff like that, after having seen so many of them, kind of what people are looking for. But you still have this sort of weird psychological task of going, I'm influencing somebody's sort of porn habit, and I have no clue whether they like it or not.
Yeah. So how did you reconcile your witness upbringing with what you were suddenly observing? Because everybody who's been raised a witness knows that porn is basically illegal, is something you can be dragged before the elders for. I think heterosexual porn is now not a disfellowshippable offence. I think it's now anything outside of that, you're in more trouble. But, you know, either way, we know it's not a thing. Married couples don't do it together. It is something that will get you an intervention at the very least. So how did you reconcile that?
You know, I think I just reconciled it by going, I want a job that isn't construction work. And, you know, it was a bit of a shock at first, but, you know, I don't know. I think it was just, I didn't really have that sort of crisis of conscience at all on it. You know, it was sort of, for me, I think when I had left, I had kind of already sort of made the leap. And there wasn't really, you know, I think I had one moment where I thought about going back when I was 22 or something like that. And I just started working at this porn company. And I knew if I wanted to go back, I couldn't work at the porn company. And I went to a district convention, and that was like another one where I was like, am I going to give up my fun job in the porn industry? At the time, I was trying to play in bands because I play guitar. So I was like, am I going to give up possibly being a musician for this shit? Like sitting in a fucking room with, you know, trying to, you know, because I was only there. What I realized when I was there, I was like, I just want to hit on girls here. So I was like, do I really just want to give all this up for this? And, you know, taking stupid notes and trying not to fall asleep. And at that moment, it was just that, you know, not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think it was much harder for my friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses at the time to reconcile what I was doing.
You mentioned you had friends who were witnesses. We all know that when somebody leaves the organisation, it becomes quite salacious, and you can be the most boring, wholesome person on earth. and your old friends will still make some salacious story out of who you are and what you're doing. Somehow you are still in the gutter having daily orgies. So, but you were working for a porn company. So how did it bother you at all how your old friends would perceive you? Because they would have loved that salacious story.
You know what? The ones who had the salacious stories about me were the ones that I just didn't care about. We kind of got lucky again. I mean, I realized I don't have the prototypical Jehovah's Witness upbringing, because we sort of had a group of friends where we were the bad ones. We were the ones that didn't get invited with the good ones.
We were
the ones. Yeah, we were the lot that it was like the other parents didn't want their kids hanging out with us.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, we were, even though they were baptized and everything, we were drinking loads. And, sometimes I would have a party and I'd call up a couple of the friends that I was still friends with. They would show up at the party, even though they're active Jehovah's Witnesses. So at least for them, it wasn't a big deal. I had two friends, the girl that I grew up with, and it still hurts to this day that she kind of, X'd me out of her life, especially because of all the things we had talked about before. And I always felt like she was a bit of a kindred soul for me. And then I had another friend that I was very close to, and he just went off the deep end on me. The bad stuff with the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't start happening until I was running the meetup groups for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. The porn stuff seemed to be not a big deal. The meetups for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, suddenly I was getting into apostate territory.
I completely relate to that. So I was admin for the UK Facebook support group, which is a fantastic resource. And when people found out that, I got so much shit from old witness friends, from my mum, from my sister-in-law, who's since woken up now and appreciates it now. But at the time, I got so much shit for being admin of the support group. And it's like, I'm just stopping people killing themselves. Do you want to? And the answer is, quite frankly, yes.
Yeah. There were two friends that just, one was like really close to me, and he really just was like, oh, you're going to be destroyed. He started doing destroyed at Armageddon stuff. And I never want to talk to you. You're basically you're Satan. And I mean, really sort of, it was very hurtful stuff. But I think also when you interact with other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, you kind of, or at least I did, you start to realize it is a cult. And you start to realize that these people, they're just reacting and being forced to react this way. And in a normal situation, if they had any other exit to not react that way, they would take that exit. Yeah, I mean, well, because I think that probably most Jehovah's Witnesses, even though, unless they're just the tried and true sort of pure ones like my mom, they've been to a strip club. They have, they've smoked weed. They've done all this stuff. They've never gone to an ex-Jehovah's Witness meetup group. They've probably never even, that's something they try to force into the back of their mind. That's the one thing that they try to force into the back of their mind.
Well, it's the
versus some of these vices. Yeah. Well, it's just the one where I feel like they know they kind of understand once you go there, there's no return. Yeah. Or they think that anyways, that there's no return.
Once you wake up, there's no going back to sleep.
Yeah, and I would always tell the people that were coming in, and for anybody that's watching this, the one thing that Jehovah's Witnesses, the thing that they just can't defend is not people leaving, it's people leaving and realizing they can be happy. And the support groups are the most dangerous thing for them. Because the one thing that they have is they're the support group. And once you have left and have realized that, oh shit, I can get support here, again, you're never going to go back because there's no reason to go back. The only reason for staying was always to get that support, that community, social support. And once that's gone, it's like, and you're getting it from a new girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, or their family, whatever it is. It's like, why, 9 out of 9 times people aren't going to go back.
You've stolen their USP. If
Yeah.
you provide
Yeah, exactly.
social support outside of the organization, because then all they're left with is a bunch of completely nonsensical doctrines, which nobody's going to hang around for those once they've figured them out. It's only the love bombing that you need. It's only your family. And if you can get family and community outside, why would you bother?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like really and I think people start to realize too, it's just sort of this weird fake love. Mm-hmm. They always try to advertise that it's true love and Christian love and all this stuff, but once you start hanging around normal people and normal families, you start realizing, like, wait a minute, like this is like a bullshit love.
Yeah.
Not a real love.
And the loyalty that people have on the outside sometimes is just so much, it's just so different, because the loyalty on the inside only lasts as long as you're in and going to all the meetings, and you lose everybody, like, not even being disfellowshipped, you lose everybody if you just stop going to the meetings so much, or if they even detect, like, they can sniff being awake on you, they can smell it on you. And you lose everybody then. But I found more loyal friends on the outside who would probably visit me in jail.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that's the thing that a lot of people who are leaving, because it's like the school of hard knocks when you leave.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you're just out in the world, you're alone. There's nobody that you can really talk to, because you can't talk to Jehovah's Witnesses, who are the one people that can understand what you're going through. You can't talk to worldly people because they have no clue what it's really like. So you kind of either end up sinking or swimming. But if you can swim and you can make it, to your point, you realize this is what real friendship is like.
Yeah.
This is what a real community is like, where I don't have to pretend, or I don't have to prove constantly why you deserve my love, or you should give me your love.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting, isn't it? So I just want to go back to the point about how people feel about you working in the sex industry. So they were more alarmed when they found out that you were organising the XJW meetups. How did any witnesses react to finding out you were working in the sex industry?
Well, I think most of my friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses, they sort of found it fascinating, or they would just sort of go, yeah, that sounds like something you would do, and kind of shake their head. I mean, the funny thing is, there was probably more stigma with my friends outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, that were kind of normal. That, not that I hung out with that many normal people, but the normal ones. I remember I had a girlfriend who, her dad, when he found out that I worked in the porn industry, he wouldn't talk to me, and was like doing everything he could to break us up, because I think he thought somehow I was going to get his daughter into the porn industry or something. And I tended to deal more with normal people who had issues with me working in porn versus the Jehovah's Witnesses, who also, I think Jehovah's Witnesses have a weird way of judging, where they're kind of like, once you're out, that's already bad enough. So anything, whether you're smoking crack or working in porn, it's like, well, you're just out of Jehovah's organization, so you're still bad.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. I have this feeling, and I need to explore it further, that when people leave and when they're on the inside, they have this perception of worldly people and XJWs that they are just having these daily orgies, these daily meth and heroin fueled orgies. And so they probably weren't so shocked, because of course that's what you do when you leave the organization. Yeah. Isn't every worldly person working in the sex industry? Except the ones that are drug addicts or stabbing people. I mean, like, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, and I did, there was one guy who, he actually studied with me when I was going to go get baptized. And I also knew he was only doing it just so he could stay an elder, because he was like making loads of money. He had his own company. He was drinking all the time. Anytime there was another woman around, he'd be flirting with her. So I'm sure he was cheating on his wife. But I remember it was like at the moment where I was like, well, maybe I'll come back. So I went to a district convention and then did just like a normal local convention. And at the local convention, I remember I was like standing outside by myself because, of course, my friends that were there were like, well, we can't really be seen talking to him while at this convention, which I was fine with. I understood that. But I remember he came up to me and mentioned something about me working in porn and how I should change my bad ways. And that was another one where it was just like, yeah, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. Like, fuck you. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm like, I like my job. And he was like, well, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, I guess. And yeah, I'm like, leave me the fuck alone. Like, get out of here. I think that's another thing Jehovah's Witnesses never encounter.
Well, being
is somebody
straight, yeah.
Yeah, somebody just being like, I don't care what you think. But that's like kryptonite to them. They have no way to react to that.
My husband always says they've only got the power you give them.
What would be your top tips to somebody leaving the organisation who's got a curiosity about the sex industry? So what would be your top tips to working in that field in a safe, looking after yourself and others kind of way?
I would say, first, what you get a lot in porn, and it's a stereotype, and they'll always sort of fight against us, but it's just the reality. A lot of people who go into porn are going in it not because they like it, not because they really want to do it, but usually because they have some sort of psychological bruising going on, right? They're sort of they either got trapped with the wrong guy, usually it's women, or if they're gay, they're just down on their luck, or they need money for a habit, whatever. So first of all, get yourself right psychologically. Mm-hmm. Don't let it become a crutch for some other pain or feelings that you're going through. So that's number one. Make sure you're in a good psychological headspace.
Get therapy. Make sure that you're not trying to use porn as your therapy.
Yeah, exactly. So many people use sex as their therapy, and that's not very healthy to do. The second thing would be, whoever you're going to partner with, you need to make sure that you trust them completely and that they are not going to be using you. Because you see these topsy-turvy relationships in porn where that happens. I think sites like Pornhub have done a great job of sort of decentralizing the porn industry and allowing especially a lot more women to kind of go, hey, I'm going to do my own independent thing in the safety of my bedroom on my terms. Mm-hmm. Because if you go into the porn industry, especially how the porn industry used to be, and granted, I have been in it for years, but at least the way it used to be, at the end of the day, you're usually going to be working for just some guy who's all coked up, who just wants money, as much money as possible. And they're going to use you like a fucking racehorse. Right. And they're going to use you until they can't use you anymore. Mm-hmm. So if you have a chance to be able to do it independently in the safety of your own home, with the understanding also of, I think if you're in a porn, it's, think of it too, it may haunt you for the rest of your life. It may be something that 15 years down the road, you may randomly get a video of yourself. And so you also just have to understand that if that's something you want to do, you have to own it.
Yeah.
And if you don't own it, probably worse things will come.
That's what I tweeted the other day. If you own your own story, nobody can weaponize it against you.
Yeah.
You're prepared to own your own story. These days, I mean, when I was pole dancing, there was no such thing as smartphones. Nobody would have taken a picture of you. Nobody knew what you were doing. There's only like my first day, like staff photo, and I don't know where that is, but there was nothing salacious about it. But nowadays, you can expect that kind of thing to come back on you. So,
did you ever have Jehovah's Witnesses coming into the strip club? Like, did you ever?
No,
interact with any?
I actually worked in law at the time, and I did have some lawyers from a rival firm come in, but they didn't know who I was. So
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
they had very, very big mouths
Oh, I'm sure.
about their industry. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And they're talking to the stripper with no idea that she works for the rival firm.
Yeah. That's some good insider intel there that you're able to get.
But no,
I mean, Oh, I was just going to ask that, because there's certainly things that I take away from working in porn that I can use practically in the real world, oddly enough. And that's just, as a stripper, did that help you sort of be more social in once you got out of stripping? Did it help you with the psychology? Because I feel like you've got how to psychologically deal with people cornered, especially men, because they teach you that as a Jehovah's Witness, then you're learning that as a stripper,
Yeah, I learned it more as a Jehovah's Witness, to be honest, and applied those techniques to being a stripper. But the reason that I quit, I got PMT, PMS, whatever you guys call it.
Yeah.
And I just decided I hate them all. I went in that night and I was like, fuck all of you. I don't want to talk to you tonight. But normally I could just pull it out the bag. So I'm quite introverted, but I can pull it out the bag and pretend not to be for however long I've got to. And that still pays me now in my work.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes before a meeting, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then, snap into it like I'm on stage and then done.
Yeah.
And that's more the witness training going on the ministry than anything else. So yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses train good strippers.
Well, and I always tell people, I'm like, what being a Jehovah's Witness, the positive that did come out of it, it's positive and a negative. Because when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're sort of taught to be a people pleaser, but you're also taught to read people instantly. And when you're going to doors and you're talking to people, you're starting to read them just instantly. You can figure out if they're interested or not interested, not interested. And I've used that. So I've been able to use that so effectively at work. Mm-hmm. Just that I can sort of instantly read people and figure out what they're into. And because you're constantly arguing and you're constantly trying to find some angle in, I've had to work on that. But that's another thing that sort of has always helped. You kind of learn how to live in between the spaces to get somebody to change their mind.
So much. You learn it's almost like debate club, isn't it? And it's quite tribalistic. You just want people to be won round to your point of view.
Well, and I think that's sort of the thing exiting, like I had to sort of, not that I was bad about manipulating people or anything like that, but it's just so ingrained into you. And you sort of have to learn to unwind these kind of those sorts of bad habits of like what a cult brings along with, and that sort of cult mentality. Yeah. And that's something I still struggle with a little bit. I'm like way better now, but just sort of knowing when to shut up.
Yeah.
And knowing when to go, hey, this isn't, who cares if they have this opinion?
It's been so lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
So next I'm going to read you out the experience and journey of a friend of mine. She's a female ex-JW. I'm not going to give away anything about her identity, but I'm going to read you her story now, in her words, but my voice. My mum was baptised while I was in utero. I was raised to ultimately become a Jehovah's Witness, but I don't remember actually planning on getting baptised until a specific family event happened. I ended up making the rash decision to get baptised right after my high school graduation. I didn't strongly believe that Jehovah's Witnesses had the truth, but I went through with the worst decision ever anyway. What kind of Jehovah's Witness was I? I would describe myself as a decent actress. I was considered exemplary and would often have parts at the hall. I juggled college, part-time work and auxiliary pioneering. I was great at faking the funk, But I remember I got deeply frustrated with my situation and depressed my last year as a Jehovah's Witness. I knew I needed to get out of my situation. I was able to find escape via vacations with other JWs who needed freedom and sex work. I've always been both sexually curious and sex positive when all parties are consenting adults. I don't remember ever feeling guilty about my personal or professional sexual activities. They were my business. I was 21 when I figured out the power I had seducing men. I ended up finding postings for bikini/lingerie modelling gigs online. Initially, it was completely legit and innocent. Then, I started finding more adult-orientated postings by hobbyists. I made extra cash while having the thrill of seducing men without any physical contact. Eventually, I started to get into softcore bondage modelling. That was a very exciting time. It was a world that was completely new to me. I never felt guilty about what I was doing as a Jehovah's Witness. It was a form of expression and exploration for me. As a JW, as a rule, I couldn't explore this side of myself, so sometimes I wondered if I would have done all of the above if I'd had the freedom to explore my sexuality more openly. Was it because I felt repressed? Possibly. After I left home and the organisation completely, I continued doing some fetish modelling, and after leaving the state, I did topless pole dancing for a year. Pole dancing was something I'd always fantasised about doing. I think it's beautiful. I really enjoyed dancing, but I was young, dumb and ripe for abuse since I was new to the world. In a state where I didn't know anyone I could trust and had self-doubt when it came to simply trusting my gut, because I ignored my gut, I found myself in trouble where I was being controlled by others. Sadly, I was in 2 different abusive relationships. After moving again, I did one more fetish modelling gig to pay the rent. I mentioned how pole dancing was something I'd always fantasised about doing. Something else I'd fantasised about was having a sugar daddy. Something about it seemed really sexy to me. So in my search for a sugar daddy, I ended up having to kiss a lot of frogs, which most people would describe as escort work. This period was very brief, fortunately. I ended up finding my man, and this sugar relationship ultimately turned into a serious one that was also healthy. After the previous relationships I mentioned where I was being controlled, I made it a point never to end up in situations like that again. When it comes to being safe, when it comes to sex work, I'm not sure I can offer the best advice other than know yourself. Fortify your internal locus of control, especially after leaving a cult. Know your limits, and don't ever let anyone talk you into doing or giving more than you want to. Thank you very much to the brave contributor of that story. The final story that I need to read to you out loud is from a male ex-witness in the UK, and he's given me this text to read regarding his experiences. My mum started studying in 1986 when I was 1. The family she studied with were a constant. As a single mum, that was nice because it gave me and her support as I grew up. In later life, these people became my nemesis. My father left long before I was born. When you're a kid, your parents' reality is your own, so the truth was just normal life. I was a bit of a live wire, and I remember a lot of discussions about fatherless boys, etc. But on the other hand, I was smart, articulate and sharp. My theocratic ministry school scheduled assignments were usually spot on, and by the time I was a young teenager, I'd often walk into the hall to be handed a dropout assignment that I could cover in 20 minutes. I was a natural with people and a gifted public speaker. This affinity for people would be a gift and a curse. When I was 10, my mother met a fellow brother who was new, and they got along, a fellow brother being a Jehovah's Witness. Courtship, engagement and marriage followed, and I had a dad. Unfortunately, he was also abusive, and by the time I was 13, the marriage was at an end. It stopped and started over the years with various attempts to reconcile, usually ending in my mother thrown down the stairs or the house smashed up. Eventually she was free of him, but her belief in the people around her was damaged, and she was never as zealous as she once was. She struggled with her mental health and had what at the time caused a breakdown. I found her naked, screaming in an alleyway on my council estate once, where she punched me and scaled a fence and ran away. At the time I joked it away, but she was seriously mentally ill. By the time I was 16, she was well on her way out of the witnesses and looking for a new life. She was a Jehovah's Witness shell, hollowed out and standing on a doorstep, shoving Bible tracts in people's faces with all the interest of a supermarket greeter waiting for their hour to be up. She remarried at some point outside of the Jehovah's Witnesses and was disfellowshipped. We weren't close then and it passed without much notice. In recent years that's changed and she has a good relationship with her children and grandchildren. The JWs are a lost memory. In the JW circles, as time went on, I led a double life. I had a few female friends in the JWs, but I knew the risk was too great to push it. Around these times I found it was easy to lie. I had to lie to my peers at school, I had to lie to the elders who thought I was golden, and lie to cover up the fact that I would have anything from 2 to 5 sisters in different halls, all with secret fantasies expressed but hidden. I liked it and I realised I was good at it. The truth was always the truth. I wasn't zealous. I broke the rules, but it was the only truth that I knew. I treated it academically, like something to score highly on, and I realised I could do as I pleased. Coupled with the fact that the hell of my mother was only made worse by the truth, I realised the truth may well be the truth, but liked living the lie. So I stopped thinking of Jehovah as someone to draw close to, but as an academic character in a book. Later, as time went on and my mother fell away, I stayed very much the shining beacon of the congregation, but in the real world I went from girl to girl and sex was a hobby. I met a girl who I genuinely did adore. She was an outsider in the truth. She went to university, albeit her local one, and she had a brilliant career ahead of her. She was a staunch feminist, and she vocally spoke out about why weren't sisters allowed to do this or that. I remember sitting with her while she told the district overseer it was stupid that she as a qualified engineer couldn't do as much as brothers could. Eventually at 20 we got married. It gave me access to family and stability, and she had a good mind, she was fierce and she was pretty. Our whole courtship I was doing my own thing too. I viewed the truth as one life and my other life as 2 entirely disconnected things. At around 22 I bought a decent camera and got into it. Brothers and sisters would enjoy my nature photographs and landscapes. I even did the shots of the Kingdom Hall refurb, but I saw it as another opportunity to feed my need, so I started scouting for models who shot erotica. I would fake working away here and there to meet up in studios and hotels. Initially my ideas weren't developed and I struggled. As time passed, I engaged more and more and set up accounts and sold my images to erotic websites. I never shot the clear porn as I saw it, but dark, heavy erotica usually revolving around the female boudoir, masturbation and light but dignified bondage. On several occasions I surprised the models. Here I was, a young, relatively handsome, articulate chap, not the old guys they were used to. I often ended up in some casual sexual relationship with them or a bit of post-shoot fun. It opened a whole world of beautiful sexual women with absolutely no connection to my JW life. Sex became the norm, I got into bondage and some other kinks. Threesomes were on the table, as were other activities my normal JW wife wouldn't even entertain. Our life was good, she was happy, I was tipped as the next ministerial servant, and we were both encouraged to pioneer with a view to being career missionaries. Her desire for equality was pacified with some kind of spiritual career. Slowly, though neither of us saw kids as a reality and both of us were consumed by work, socialising and living our pleasant lives. In 2009, I made my mistake. An old phone was tucked away in a cupboard. I had a clear out and decided to sell it. I left it on the table charging. I'd forgotten what was on it. Usually I'm forensic, cleaning up after myself. There was a whole series of very explicit and often dark sexual conversation between me and a model friend. My JW wife opened it and the whole bomb went off in my life. She was smart. She immediately took it to the PO of the congregation, presiding overseer, as they used to be. And by the time I realised I'd made my mistake, I had 2 local elders at the door and she had moved back to her dad's. I had to go through a gruelling 3 months. Move out, do my penance and get back. It was dull, hard and boring. I realised totally then that the truth was a fraud. I'd managed to give fabulous talks, read the Watchtower, take part in convention programmes and serve on various assignments while having this other sex-mad working life. Only now, through my own stupidity, was I found out. I lied and spun as much story as I could to limit the damage and isolate my mistakes to one worldly girl who led me astray. Eventually, me and my Jehovah's Witness wife got back together. It changed. Something changed in her and me. We lived. She confessed her own sins to me and me alone. She'd been involved with a woman at work. My mind was set. I was out of there. I formulated a plan and extracted myself financially and religiously. I withdrew from the JWs like an angel fallen from grace, but with my head high. Me and my JW wife split amicably this time, and I set up a new life in a different part of the country. At this time I was low, I was alone, no friends, estranged from my mother, treated like an outcast. My mother wasn't in a hurry to welcome me back. So north I went and I threw myself into photography and work. I shot porn, I even acted in a few porn scenes myself, doing a lot of point of view work, and I don't know what gonzo type support is, but gonzo type support, still photography for video producers. I had sex with women as some kind of therapy. I hid my JW past. I went to a hotel to do a girl-on-girl scene, and one girl was a seasoned pro for solo work and the other one was a newbie. Both had never done girl-on-girl work, and it was my first proper step into my own work, my way, that was going to be sold and used for profit. It was clinically executed and the girls loved it. 3 hours start to finish and I was a god. We stayed at the hotel bar for a while drinking, and one of the girls started talking about her past. It turned out she'd been a JW. I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't ashamed of suggesting to girls 69 or do all sorts of other things, but I was ashamed of my JW clean-cut past. Following on from that heady 18 months of all-out sin, I met another girl and settled into what real life would be like. She had a 6-month-old baby and her partner had done a midnight flit. We got on, and she used to be a cam girl but was now concentrating on her uni studies and her daughter. We genuinely fell in love. We had fun, and it was nice to share the deeper, darker side of my sex life with someone who understood. I approached my old congregation and went through a semi-formal judicial, came to a handshake agreement of disassociation. We left with no hard feelings. That side of my life was dead, and now to move on. Inevitably, though, the massive black dog caught up with me. Years of living in a death cult of sorts, the internal struggle of sin and judgment, but being myself a deeply sexual person had ground me down. I eventually just bombed. I got depressed, stressed, violent. My stepfather, all those years ago, had taught me something at least. I couldn't function other than in a bubble of rage. Most people who knew me were genuinely terrified of me, and I had zero impulse control. I had to get help, serious help. And after a year of medical assistance, therapy, and love from my partner, I became a whole person, not two people. My sex work slid away. It was too much to deal with, and I focused now on my 2 daughters. I adopted her baby and had my own. I got serious about work and applied my cunning and skills to it. My wife and I had fun. We went to a few swingers meetings, never got into it properly. As a bi woman, I encouraged her to explore without shame, and she did so with or without me. Our sex life was and is a real guilt-free zone. My philosophy since my JW exit has been quite fatalistic. I have about 65 years left in me. After that, I'm nothing. I return merely to cosmic dust. It really doesn't matter what I do, it's of no great consequence. So in that time I intend to explore and enjoy every one of my passions, sex being high on that list. The creation of erotic art became a way to show my own internal desires. I won't apologise for it or be ashamed by it. However, leading a 2-sided life tells me one simple and very honest truth. What people don't know doesn't hurt them. I am always careful to keep my lives away from each other until I die a happy and fulfilled old man. Thank you very much to the writer of that story as well. Very brave, and I really appreciate your honesty. I said earlier on that I wanted to share my own story with you. Now, the reasons for this include people from my past trying to use my story against me. So some have even gone as far as to tell my children that I used to be a lap dancer / pole dancer. Now, my children are in their late teens and I had already told them. So none of this has had any real impact, save to upset my children that somebody would try to hurt them with that. So they're not upset with me, they're upset with the people who would try to hurt them with that story. And the other reason is that I just want to join the ranks of the brave people that I was able to interview for this video by being really honest about my own story, my own history and account. So if this helps one person, if one person can relate to it, then that it's achieved everything I want it to do, and it will strip those people who try to use my story against me of their power. So we need to go back to when I was a regular pioneer. I was in my early 20s. I was married and had been married for about a year. I was desperately, incredibly unhappily married. I would definitely say that my marriage was abusive. I won't go into details on this, but I felt that I had very good reason to leave my situation, and I would have advised any friends of mine to leave it a long time before. So I was a regular pioneer, really, really unhappily married, living in this tiny little cul-de-sac, cute little cul-de-sac in the city of Southampton in the UK. And a neighbour of mine came running over one day. She was a woman about the same age as me, in her early 20s. We hit it off instantly, and she turned out to be a lapsed Jehovah's Witness who had noticed our movements on weeknights and Sunday mornings and Saturday mornings, and she wanted to restart her study. So we were thinking, we're going to be in the yearbook. This is amazing. But it turned out that I won't say she was a bad influence on me. We were an energizing influence on each other. We had loads of fun together. By witness standards, totally bad influence, but we had a great time. So we spoke to the elders, and I was given permission to study with her, and there were no sanctions against her because her and her partner were going to get married, and they just said, well, they need to split up, physically move out from the same house until they get married, which they agreed to do. So she and I became really, really good friends, and I began confiding in her some of the things that were going on in my life. And it got to the point where I just knew I had to leave. So I rented a flat, and I had a small part-time job in a lawyer's office. This was before I studied law, but I worked in lawyers' offices pretty much since I left school. So I didn't earn an awful lot, and I didn't have a lot to support myself with. I hadn't been able to go to university because witnesses know that's heavily discouraged. So I had very little income to support myself on my own. So I managed to secure this little flat, but to pay the rent as well as buy food and, crazy stuff like that, I needed a little extra. And my friend who I studied with knew quite a few girls who were pole dancers or lap dancers, and we generally just agreed that that would be quite a good idea. So I spoke to some of these girls, and they managed to swing an audition for me, which wasn't as easy as you'd think, actually. There's not quite there's the demand, I think, but there are a lot of people willing and able to do the job. So they managed to swing an audition for me, and in the middle of broad daylight, in a nightclub, in a strip club, I went along, and there was just one male manager there, and I just had to dance. So he told me to go and I was in my jeans and t-shirt, just go and dance around the pole. So I did that, did my best. And then the next round I had to strip. Now in the UK, I think it's different some places. In the UK, you wear underwear as a lap dancer or a pole dancer. You have to wear a sort of reasonably substantial thong so that you don't see any of the really intimate areas. So I had to strip down to my thong underwear and dance topless. And at the end of that song, he deadpan, looked me in the eye as he wandered off and said, "Nice face, nice body, you need to slow down." And that was it, he was gone. And I had started working. So, nice face, nice body, need to slow down probably needs to go on my tombstone. So that weekend, I started working. What a lot of the girls would do is work in the next town over, because that meant that your personal safety was a bit better protected. Nobody could follow you home as easily. So I was working about 45-minute drive away from where I lived. And we would carpool as well. So I was matched with another girl who came from a similar area, and we carpooled to the next town over. So I was stone cold sober my first night. I probably could have done with not being, but I was. And I got to know the girls in the dressing room, got introduced to everybody. There was a girl there who, it was her 18th birthday, and she was starting work, and her family were fully supportive and had dropped her off for safety and were picking her up, and yeah, wow, really open-minded stuff. So the way it would work on those nights is that each girl would do 2 pole dances to tracks that they had chosen, musical tracks they've chosen, and they would tell the DJ, and they would have these 2 dances. And one of the dances, if I remember rightly, this was a really long time ago, was clothed, and one of them was topless and just in a thong, and killer heels, like really killer heels with the massive platform, which I still enjoy wearing. So I had to learn quickly before the night opened how to do a bit of pole dancing. Oh, there goes the dog snoring again. How to do a bit of pole dancing. And some of the girls were really helpful and showed me. So I learnt some really basic techniques before I got started. And then it was curtains up. Some of them were amazing. So there was one girl that had this kind of rock routine. Both of her songs were really loud rock tunes. She had this really short, kind of choppy black hairdo. And it was, yeah, she did this amazing piece. At all kinds of different styles. It was probably something for everybody's taste. And the performance on the pole was kind of advertising for when you would go around and offer lap dances. There was no stuffing money in anybody's thong. In the UK, at least back then, it was look but don't touch. So nobody was actually allowed to lay hands on you in any way whatsoever. So you would sell yourself as best you could on the pole. And then when you went round afterwards, people would usually want you to do their lap dance if they'd taken a shine to you. So you'd wander around and you'd talk to people and you'd ask them if they wanted a dance or wanted some company. And probably 50% of the time people wanted a lap dance, which was kind of grinding your your chest and ass into their crotch, but you never touched. So you were always kind of like levitating that far away from them. And they had to actually keep their hands behind themselves so they couldn't touch you. So you'd get as close as you could without actually touching them. That is a skill in itself, this levitating kind of dance. And I think I probably had thighs of steel when I was doing that. The money was really good. Sometimes I'd make £400 a night, which is pretty decent. So that pretty much paid the rent. And people were on the whole nice. You know, sometimes I'd find myself in a situation where they would be spilling all their secrets. So there was a time when I was talking to a lawyer from a different firm, and he had no idea that he wasn't just talking to a dumb stripper. So he was very liberal with the things he was telling me about his job. And there were other situations where, not everybody was nice. Some people could be quite rude. Some people decided to come in and start negging you. They'd ask you for a lap dance and pay for it, and then, tell you they didn't fancy you after all and trying to get their money back. And, it was just their way of going around and getting free dances. But overall, it was a pretty positive experience. Met nice people. Some of the girls were working, they were going to university and completing their degrees, or they were working in other jobs and they were just subsidising themselves on the weekend. And bear in mind, this is quite fun as well. So it's look but don't touch, it's quite well protected, there's security everywhere. And what else was I going to do on the weekends? I wanted to dance anyway. So it was only dancing with one item of clothing less than I normally would anyway. By this time I was going clubbing fairly regularly with my friend who was also my study. So I'm not advocating for it, but I'm also not criticising the experience that I had. I'm going to have to give the dog a nudge so that he stops snoring. So what else can I tell you about it? Some of the girls were amazing. Some of the girls were really struggling. Some of the girls spent all of their money on drugs and handbags. Some of the girls were putting their money under their mattress to save for a house deposit. The one that I car shared with, she had £40,000 under her mattress that she wanted to buy a house with. Some of the girls were smart and kind and funny and just wonderful people. And some of them were catty and a bit messed up. But isn't that just people? So I think that's a thing that I'd really want to share with people, that people who engage in sex work are really complex humans. And you can't make any assumptions about who they are from the job that they're doing. I mean, the other interesting thing that I always say is that when you meet people at different times of their life, you get this snapshot of who they are. And if you meet them at one time, they're completely different to if you met them 10 years down the road, to if you met them another 10 years on. So there was a time in my life when I was a very, very righteous, regular pioneer who wanted to go to Gilead and who wanted to find the right spouse who would take her to Gilead. There was then a time in my life when I had chronic fatigue and I was doing next to nothing and I was deeply miserable. And without wanting to get into the ins and outs of chronic fatigue syndrome, I feel for me, it was a physical manifestation of depression, which stemmed from being caught in a religion that I was having real doubts about the headship principle in particular. Because I was married and really unhappily married, I had real doubts about why somebody would just be given all this authority over you without kind of any regard or respect for your own abilities or your own needs and wants, why you would be shoehorned into this position just because you're female. And I guess for men as well, being elevated into this position of leadership, whether they want it or not. So if you'd met me then, I had chronic fatigue and I barely left the house. If you met me when I was a pole dancer, I was again a totally different character that you may have a perception of. And if you met me again a few years later after I'd gone back to my ex-husband, who'd promised to go to anger management therapy and he'd put "Jilly, please come home" on bed sheets that he put on billboards all around the city, so I did eventually go back to him, then you would have met a stay-at-home mother who blended a sweet potato for her children and read them stories in multiple languages to try and encourage their neural capacity, and who read them the Bible storybook every night. And my whole world was then being a mother. And if you meet me now, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness activist who is studying and who has a career in supporting people who have vulnerabilities and health inequalities. So then that's it. I'm grateful to you for listening, and I hope that you found the experiences of my friends really interesting, potentially informative, however you found them. So I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this. One of the most important things that I think we can develop when we leave the Jehovah's Witness organisation is an understanding that we can let go of policing what other people are doing. What other people do, our conscience doesn't have to apply to other people. Our conscience only applies to us. Our view of morality, it all only applies to us. The only person that we have control over is ourselves. And I just think that that's a really, really important takeaway. So when it comes to my own story, some people would have made different decisions at that time in life. I don't regret what I did. I'm not advocating that anybody else take the same path. That was my path, this is my story, these are the stories of my friends, and I'm very grateful for their honesty in giving those today. And I'd like to encourage anybody who maybe does want to engage in any kind of sex work to be safe, both emotionally and physically, and to make sure that, as came up time and time again, you're listening to your gut. And above all, whatever you do after leaving the organisation, the only person who has to be happy with it is you.